Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. So today we are joined by Liz Marsden and she's going to present our webinar today on the Powerful Presenter. Now this is one of 3 sessions that Liz will be providing, so we'll give out dates when we know when the next 2 sessions will be happening. If you have any questions, everybody's muted once they've been accepted into the session. So if you have any questions, at the top right hand corner there is a question box. If you put your questions in there, and then I'll put them to Liz once she's finished her presentation. We are recording today's session and there will be slides available as well. So if you'd like a copy of those, then please do contact me and I'll have those sent out to you. Our next session next month is going to be Companies House IDV. So if anybody has any interest in that, that will be our last IDV webinar before the legislation's implemented on the 18th of November. I haven't got a date for it yet because I'm waiting for Companies House to get back to me, because Companies House are going to join me on that one. So as soon as we have any information, then we'll let you know about that. So, as I said, today we are being joined by Liz Marsden. Now, Liz is a respected leadership development consultant and has over 25 years experience in that field. So I hope you enjoyed today's session and I'll pass you over to Liz.
Thanks very much, Liz, and welcome everybody. It's lovely to be here talking to you about presentation. As Liz says, I've got far too many years experience in the leadership development field, and one of the big things that I find, whatever company, organisation I'm working with, is a demand for increasing people's confidence in their ability to communicate and to present. So this has been a constant theme throughout all the experience that I've had. As you probably know, public speaking is one of the biggest fears that people have, and I would imagine that 90% of the people that I meet will admit to feeling nervous about needing to present, either quite a long way ahead or just before you go to deliver your presentation. So if that's how you feel, you are not alone. Interestingly, death is slightly less scary than presenting on quite a regular basis. So today is an amalgamation of the trainings that often I run with colleagues and with many organisations. So it's sort of distilling all of that that training and development and activities that we would do with participants into telling you some of the biggest tips, hints and ways that you can become your best presenter the next time that you need to do this. And while I'm talking a lot about presentations, a lot of these skills, as you develop them, are really helpful in everyday interactions and communications as well. So I'm hoping that you will get quite a lot from today, and then as Liz said, we are doing 2 further webinars in the future to look at extra elements of presentation. So without further ado, the topics that I'm going to cover with you today, first of all, just really briefly, why does it matter? If you can stand up and deliver your message, does it matter that you do all the good things or not? And then really get into the tools and techniques of being a powerful presenter. So how you can use effective body language and vocal control to most effectively communicate your message and hopefully to influence people to deliver what you want them to do. And then how to be your best looks at some of the additional tips that I have around maybe managing nerves and how to prepare. So moving into why does it matter? Some of you may have come across this model in other organisations, the PIE model. This was developed by a gentleman called Harvey Coleman, who looked at what influences the way people progress through an organisation, and he identified these 3 key areas. So first of all, the performance that you deliver within work, then the image that you convey and the exposure that you get within that organisation and externally. So performance obviously is what you do on a day-to-day basis, the actual work you deliver. Image is, you see, the message, your personal brand, but it's perception, the perception people form about you when they see you and hear you. And exposure is how much you get in front of other people. And the percentages, the biggest influencer that you can see there that he identified was exposure. So getting the right exposure, and we can probably all think of people who do a fantastic job, but somehow seem to go under the radar, and possibly the other way around. So the focus that I work on with a lot of organisations around presenting is about, if you get that exposure opportunity and your performance is on par, making sure that you can manage the perceptions of you to the best of your ability. And that's, I guess, what today is about. So if we move into looking at tools and techniques, I mentioned that we're going to look at body language and at vocal control. And another quick model for you here. This is a model developed by Professor Albert Mehrabian, who looked at the impact on an audience when they listen to a presentation and what impacts how much they remember after the presentation. And he identified three areas that really impact that. One is the body language. One is what you say, so the words that you use, the content that you talk about, and then how you say it. So the body language, the content, and the vocal delivery. And I'm guessing if I asked you, some of you would have different ideas about what has the biggest impact. What was identified was that actually the body language, the visual, has the biggest impact. And if this doesn't mean that the content and what you're actually saying is irrelevant. What it means is if those things don't match up together, so if they're not congruent, the message that your audience or the person listening to you will focus on is what they're seeing. And I guess the quickest way to connect with that is, if I were to open today by saying, hi, my name's Liz Marsden, really pleased to meet you and excited to be here, you're not seeing that from me, and you can hear those words, but my body language and my vocal delivery is conveying a different message, and that's what we pick up on. It's a human instinct. So that's why when we're training in presentation skills, a lot of our focus is on managing our body language to give the best perception. And there's a quote here that really resonates. They may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And if we all think about maybe our first teachers in school, or a particular boss that we worked with, you don't remember all the words, but you absolutely remember how you feel about them and how they made you feel. So moving into then body language, I'm sure you've all had some sort of reading or learning about body language in the past. So none of this is going to be brand new, I don't think, to you, but it's hopefully going to give you some ways of learning to manage some of those things effectively. But we're going to look at eye contact, the importance of that when you're with an audience. We're going to talk about hand gestures, so movement with that, facial expressions, and then stance and movement in general. So if you are in a room, how can you most effectively move within that room, but also how should your stance and posture be when you are still? So first of all, eye contact. We all know the things around that, the importance of eye contact, and we've all heard of the importance of doing that. When you're presenting, there are certain things to be aware of and to think about. What eye contact gives to you as a presenter is a way of checking on your audience, and that's really helpful. Particularly, I say that as somebody who cannot see any of your faces right now, but when you are presenting, if you're getting some reactions back, helps you gauge what's happening and how things are going, if there's somebody that doesn't understand, etc. The recommendation is, if you can actually make eye contact with people, then don't do it for more than 2 to 3 seconds. because they're going to start freaking out if you're staring at them. But try and move that eye contact around the audience, move from left to right, right to left again, so you are varying that. The 2 to 3 seconds is helpful to remember, because the temptation sometimes when you're presenting, you see a friendly face, somebody who's smiling at you and being encouraging and interested, and you deliver to that person. And that can start to feel uncomfortable for that individual. But the other risk is that you're excluding other members of the audience who may then lose interest or distract from your presentation. So think about moving that eye contact around and using it as a benefit to yourself as well. There used to be advice about look at the clock on the back of the wall or look at a particular spot. Generally, you're going to look like you're looking at a clock on the back of the wall if you fix on that. So try and vary and try and see that audience and use that as helpful information. Moving now to hand gestures. You might have noticed me use a couple of gestures already. The key thing I would say in a quick summary like today around this is try and make them purposeful. So we all probably have habits of how much we use our hands. Is it a lot? Is it not? And gestures that we make almost subconsciously. So these kind of movements. Try and think about, in my presentation, where do I want to use a gesture to help the audience connect, understand, or remember a point? So an example on this slide, using your arm to show that sales went up. And this goes back to what I was saying about connecting that body language with your message. If you say sales went up, there's something in our brains as we're watching that disconnects and feels discombobulated. And as we start to think, what was that? What did she say? Did they go up or down? You've lost the focus of your audience. So get that gesture matching and think about it almost as a way of highlighting an element. If you think when you write out your presentation, or these days you type out your presentation, you'll have full stops, you'll have paragraph breaks. When the audience is listening to you, obviously they don't see that. So use those gestures to help them to put those pauses in, or that underline, that emphasis. Another gesture that is really helpful is to use counting. If you have 3 points that you want to make, then tell the audience, there's 3 things that I would like you to know today. The first, the second, the third. It helps them keep up with you. Just make sure that you do say the first, the second, the third, because if you miss one, again, it's like, where did the third go? So again, just think about purposeful movement and where you would like that to be. So facial expressions, you may have feedback that you have a poker face or that you can be read like a book. And controlling that can be difficult sometimes, but be aware that we absolutely connect or disconnect with facial expression. So even if this is as simple as when you start your presentation, smile, it makes a huge difference. So smile at your audience, it connects them to you, it engages them, and it helps you relax a little. And maybe think about getting some feedback on how do your facial expressions match your presentation. Stance then is the stance and movement is the last area that I'm going to talk to you about. Initially, the stance, I'm thinking about your starting posture at the very beginning of the presentation. And we've got some examples of ways that people might stand at that point or during their presentations that just, this is back to that perceptions thing. If your audience see some of these stances, they may perceive these things about how you are feeling or how you are presenting. So hands on hips is classic body language. Oh, it's angry, it's challenging, etc. And the folded arms one is probably the biggest body language classic. one thing I would say to you, if you're presenting and you're looking at your audience and they've got arms folded, it's probably just comfortable, don't worry about it. But if you know that this is your go-to position, any of these, when you do stand up in front of an audience, just think about, how can I maybe change that to look more confident and comfortable? But I am also not saying that you should never ever do some of these things. There is no one perfect with all of this. It's about making decisions about what's right for you and getting some feedback. So particularly in the middle there, they're overconfident with hands in pockets. I have seen some people particularly go from very nervous presenting to having one hand in a pocket, and somehow that relaxes them, that makes them feel a lot more confident and comfortable. The only thing I would say with that is don't jiggle stuff in your pockets, okay? So if you're thinking about a starting stance for your presentation, the recommendations I would have are stand up straight, shoulders back, because A, looks more confident, B, helps you get some air in your lungs. Feet hip width apart, ideally, because again, that grounds you and it stops you maybe doing that dancing from foot to foot or rocking, which gives that perception of nerves. Beyond that, see what works for you. And all of these, I would say, get some feedback on how it's working for you from people. Movement within the room, ideally, don't stay stood in one place the whole time. Don't stand behind a lectern, because the temptation is to cling on to that lectern. Move within the space that you have. Don't get too close. But that movement within the space does 2 or 3 things ideally for you. It helps keep your audience's attention. Audiences, we as human beings have short attention spans if nothing changes. So just by moving from one side of the room to the other, you can change something so that your audience refocus. It's also really helpful if there's a side conversation you spot going on, just move towards that and it will get those people focused back on you. It's a really low confrontation way of maybe dealing with some of that. So think about how you can make that movement within the room. Practice it. Practice beforehand, I would say, absolutely. If you don't want to be walking around and falling over wires, plugs, etc. But again, think about how that can add to your presentation. Just quickly on body language, other elements to think about. And when I'm talking about body language, I'm really talking about that visual for your audience. And remember, that's where they take their biggest message. So other things to consider: dress. I'm not saying you should always wear X, Y, or Z, but think about the perceptions people will form based on what they see. And we've probably all heard the stats around people make decisions so quickly or at seconds of seeing you. If you were going to present to, I don't know, Google, Facebook, you would probably wear different clothing than if you were going to a very formal business presentation. If you choose to flip those round, that's your decision, but just be conscious of how you may have to overcome some perceptions at that point. Background, and I'm saying background, and the example there is obviously a delightful Zoom background, and we've all seen some horrendous examples of some of these. But equally think about a face-to-face in a room presentation. What is behind you? Is it going to distract people? Because if it is, try and get rid of it. Try and have as little to distract people as possible. And this does also include the slides that you're using. On the third session that we'll be doing, we'll talk about slides and how you can manage those to the best of your ability. And also think about if you are sharing the stage. It's really easy if there's a few of you on stage. When you finish delivering your part, you're done. And you're going, oh, thank goodness for that. You're still on stage. People are still looking at you. Be still and focus on the person who is speaking, and that will keep your audience focused. And be conscious of the messages that you're conveying non-verbally. So that's a whistle-stop tour of body language. Next, I'm going to talk about vocal control. There are 5 elements to delivering really effectively vocally. And you can see those there. So first of all, volume, how loud or how quietly you speak, the speed at which you speak, making sure there's some pausing going on, the tone or the feeling that you're putting into your words, and the clarity. So we'll just examine those quickly. Normally we do lots of exercises with people around these, but hopefully this can get you thinking about the importance of those different elements. So volume you can use to emphasize, and I guess this is another example of thinking about if you have the written or typed page, where is your punctuation, where's your, what bit would you highlight? Use your volume to do that instead. And that the phrase there is just a really helpful way of getting people to recognize how you can completely change the meaning of a sentence with the emphasis that you use. But upping your volume a little bit on a particular message can be really helpful. I've probably only come across 2 or 3 people that I've given the feedback that they are too loud. Most of us think we are speaking more loudly than we are. And when you're presenting, particularly face-to-face in a room, you want to make sure that your volume is loud enough for everybody to hear, obviously. Get a microphone if you need to. There's no problem with doing that. Don't feel like you're having to shout and strain your voice. But upping your normal conversation level a little bit will help to convey authority, will help you to feel more confident. And the other thing it does is force you again to get some air in those lungs. So just think about, if your very quiet conversation is volume level 1 and shouting is volume level 5, probably wants to be between 3 and 4. The next area that is a big feedback area with lots of people is speed of speech. Again, I don't think I've had to give the feedback more than 2 or 3 times to somebody that they need to speed up. Most of us will speak quickly, just naturally, but also if you are feeling a little bit nervous, you'll speak more quickly. And this is touching on the second webinar. Most of us try and cram way too much stuff into our presentations. And therefore we have to speak really quickly to get through it all before the time finishes. So tip here is that the recommended number of words per minute is 110 to 120. That might sound a lot, but actually if you think about a 5-minute presentation, that's not a lot of content. So just something to bear in mind. If that was a 15-minute presentation, that's 1,800 words maximum. So slow it right down. It will feel too slow to you to start with, but get feedback again, I would say. Very closely related to this is master the pause. 2 really big advantages to getting the pause right. The first is, and I know I sound a little obsessed with this, it allows you to get some air back in your lungs. Breathe. So it allows you to do that. The second is, your audience are needing to take in what they're hearing and process it. And that takes them catch-up time. It's much easier to read information and process than it is to listen. So build them in some time to actually catch up with you. The pause will seem to you potentially like an eternity. I can promise you it's not. So try and build in some of those. Again, if you have a big paragraph break, make sure you have a pause. A pause before or after a key fact, statistic, financial amount is like getting that pen and underlining it again. So really focus on thinking about how you can best use that. Tone and intonation, we've all sat through the lecture or the seminar with the really boring monotone person and it's very hard to stay awake. Some of us naturally have quite a level voice, but think about conveying the feeling behind what you're saying. And part of that is in the preparation of your presentation and being clear on that. But try and get some intonation as well, some up and down into your voice. And the good morning there is just to think about how many different ways you can actually say good morning. Okay. The last area is clarity, so articulation, and be grateful that we are not currently in a workshop, because I would have you doing tongue twisters for the next 15 minutes, but make sure you are articulating your words. That will also slow you down. Okay, last part around vocals. There are 5 common mistakes that you probably will recognise from presenters and talking in general. Filler words. That's the ums, the ahs, the ohs, the likes, the things that we just pop in there to fill up the space. Up talk is when you end a sentence on up. So what I'm talking about is whether we take forward with something, and that was a question, but often you will hear people ending their sentence with an up, even when it's a statement. And it tends to be more common within females. The danger is it makes you sound uncertain of what you're saying. So be conscious of that, and goes back to that meaning and clarity in what you are actually saying. Jargon, think about your audience. Are they familiar with the words that you're going to be using, with the acronyms? Do you need to explain them to start with? Verbal tics are some more of those words that we use subconsciously, the likes and so on. So the fillers are the ums, the verbal tics are the like and so and it seems. It's really hard to edit those out, and it starts with being aware of it and then practicing. But being aware is the first part, and that's good. Weasel words are things that undermine the message that you're trying to deliver. Wishy-washy language that makes us sound unsure or maybe evasive. Things like probably, possibly, oh, does that make sense? Think about if you do that and catch yourself before you use those words. Maybe get some feedback, because they undermine, and you want to sound certain. You want to use less words so you can be slower. So get rid of those. Okay, that's a lot of information quite quickly. Some last tips on how to start thinking about putting some of this into place and being your best. Expect the unexpected with a presentation. One of the reasons we're nervous is that, oh, what if something goes wrong? The best tip for you here is think about all those worst case scenarios. How would I cope if? So for today, Liz Kinsey has a backup of my slides, so that if my slides didn't work, she could show them. I have timings, I have things to cut out, to put in. Think about the worst questions you could be asked by somebody and how you would answer them. Have a whole section on dealing with questions, but probably don't have time to go into lots of detail. But if you want any more information, then please do reach out. But expect the unexpected, have a backup plan, and have a backup plan B, C, and D. The biggest tip I would give you around being ready is practice. Webinar 2 is actually developing the content of your presentation, and practice starts there with getting your content right and taking lots out. But then it's actually standing up in a room and delivering that presentation. Does it take this long? Am I going too quickly? So practice and get feedback. Those are the biggest things. If you can get into the room that you are delivering your presentation in beforehand, absolutely do that, and practice the whole thing if you can, but just have a look round and see, where am I going to stand? Where will people be sitting? What will they see? Where are the traps in the room that I will fall over a sticking up plug, or all of those things? So the more you can do that, the more confident you're going to feel, and the more you've anticipated. The last bit here is just about dealing with nerves. It's natural, as I say, it's the biggest fear. Giving presentation, we're all supposed to be nervous. So my cliched advice here is try and rebrand those nerves as excitement. Yeah, it doesn't work for most of us. I would say I probably still feel nervous a lot of the time before giving a presentation. And I would say if somebody isn't even a little bit apprehensive, do they really care about what they're delivering? So they are natural. However, things you can do, practical techniques to manage them, breathing. I've mentioned it quite a lot, but when we're nervous, we tend to breathe from here. We breathe quite shallowly. So take some nice deep breaths, get the air in, and that is a message to your nervous system that you are safe, and helps to calm you a little. Beforehand, I'm not recommending doing any of this on the stage. Beforehand, if you can, do a quick exercise of take a massive deep breath in, hold for 6 or however long you can hold, whilst tensing all your muscles, all the muscles you possibly can, and then release. Because while you are tensing all those muscles, it's quite difficult to actually be doing that thinking thing of, oh, I'm nervous, what if, what if, what if, what if? So that's just a good quick way right beforehand. And there's lots of different breathing techniques that you can look into to help manage that, but absolutely just nice deep breath in before you start, get onto that platform, remember the stance that we talked about, feet hip width apart, shoulders back, smile. So that's your starting point. Ongoing increasing confidence, just a recommendation for a little bit of light reading if you were interested. Some of you may have heard of Amy Cuddy and power posing. So she is a scientist who investigated how body language impacts how you physically feel. And she talks about taking up space. Again, I'm not recommending you do a Wonder Woman pose on stage, but if you can beforehand, just go somewhere where you can complement that with the breathing techniques and just think about the space that you're taking up on stage as well. So that movement within space, the movement, the walking from side to side can help dissipate some of those nerves also. Okay, so as I say, quick whistle stop tour there, but hopefully some of those things you can think about. I absolutely have mentioned getting feedback a number of times here as well. As a learning and development person, I have to finish off with, as you're implementing some of these things, you're going to go through this cycle that, again, you may have come across. When we start learning something, initially, we don't know what we don't know. And if you think about learning to drive or ride a bike, we have no idea what's involved. As soon as we start realizing that and we realize we can't do it, we move to this conscious incompetence stage, and that's horrible. Nobody likes being somewhere where they can't do something or they keep getting it wrong. But we have to go through that to move to being consciously competent. And that's, I guess, passing your driving test stage. And then the more we do something, the more it becomes a natural behavior, until ultimately we don't have to give it the headspace and the thinking about. But to get there, we have to go through that feeling awkward and practicing lots. So hopefully some of those tips you can go have a go with, get some feedback, and become that more effective presenter and get your message across. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
Thank you so much, Liz. That was so informative. I must say that my favourite comment was, don't jiggle stuff in your pockets. That's the thing.
I'll have extras for that. Don't jiggle stuff in your pocket. If you're using a flip chart or a whiteboard and you have a pen, put it down when you've finished, because what tends to happen is that you'll play with it. And I have seen somebody stand with a pen that had the marker off and draw up and down their legs on their trousers. It's like self-soothing. There's a lovely term in the trainer technology, body leakage. If you're nervous, it's going to come out somewhere. So having those conscious movements, particularly walking across space, gets rid of some of that nervous energy. But yeah, it will come out somewhere if you don't think about it.
Okay, we have got some questions. One question is, would you answer questions as they come up, or would you save questions for the end?
Okay, as I said, I've got a whole loads of stuff on answering questions, so that is a really good one. So would I take them as they come along, or ask them to leave them till the end? First of all, what I would do is tell people at the start how I'd like to take questions, and you did that today, saying put them in the chat, and because that just signposts to people. Doesn't mean they'll stick to that, but if you'd rather take them at the end, if somebody does interrupt, you've already flagged that actually, as I said, what I'd rather do is take that at the end. So it's a nice way of kind of managing that interruption. If you're doing that, you may have heard of kind of car parking, very American, car parking the questions or the actions. Make sure you take a note, or that you've got somebody in the audience who's kind of helping you out, takes a note of that, so you do come back to that question, because there's nothing more frustrating than somebody saying, yes, we'll come back to that, and then it doesn't happen. So flag it. I guess some of it's personal preference, but also some of it will depend on the content of what you're delivering. It might work well for you to actually deal with some of those questions as they come along, but I think generally it's probably easier to do it at the end, because it keeps your flow on track then as well. It's easy to get put off, I think, isn't it?
Okay, thank you. Another question regarding how would you read the room to tailor your presentation?
How would I read the room? Okay, so that is absolutely about looking at that audience. And I get it, that actually sometimes that can be really intimidating. You'd rather not. And sometimes it can be really challenging. If you're in a big auditorium, you can't see everybody, obviously. You can't make eye contact with all the people. But it comes back to that being conscious of keep looking at the audience. If it's a huge auditorium, then split it into segments. So take that slot, the middle, and have a look, and then the side. And you will pick up if there's a lot of movement with the audience. That's a bit of an indicator that something's going on. They're distracted. They're maybe having a bit of a side conversation. But if you have to, you can focus on the front few people to get some real feedback. And I mentioned don't be put off by this folding of arms, because if you're sitting, and you're probably all doing it now, sometimes it's just a comfortable way to sit. But if somebody's sitting like that and looking at you, then they are focusing and they're interested generally, even if they're frowning. We talked about facial expressions. Not everybody is happy sunshine all day long. I know that I have a focused face that makes me look like a grumpy old bag, but it doesn't mean I'm being grumpy at you. It means I'm focusing and I'm interested. So yeah, keep doing that. Keep having a look and sanity checking. There's loads more I could talk about with if you do see that movement in interactions, but the simple tips like just moving closer towards the audience can be really helpful with that, because people sense that movement and refocus. Hopefully none of you are going into an audience that really want to be very rude, but it's so easy to get distracted, especially when people are also probably checking phones. Sometimes they're sat with laptops as well. If you're in a meeting setting where you can set some ground rules to start with, then that's great. It's much easier for me as a trainer to say, right, here's a nice list of ground rules we're all going to agree to, than starting a presentation. But even if you can premise by saying, can we have laptops down, phones off for the duration, it helps. The more you can do to sort of signpost at the start, it makes it easier to address some issues if you have them. But yeah, just keep looking, and it's amazing what you gauge just by a quick glance at what's going on.
Okay, thank you. Regarding feedback, you've talked quite a bit about feedback. If somebody hasn't got somebody to give them that feedback, if they don't feel comfortable, would you recommend perhaps practicing your presentation and recording it and then watching it back yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah, very definitely. Even if you can get feedback from a colleague, that's still a really useful thing to do. Where normally when I'm running a training session, it's much easier these days, obviously, because phones. We used to have a big tripod set up with a recording camera as people walked into the room. It's kind of put them off somewhat, but yeah, absolutely, because you see and hear things that you're just not aware of. And I'm just going to refer you right back to that slide that's on there. It's not nice to start with, and you become hyper conscious of the filler words that you might use, or that you flick your hair all the time. Very consciously trying not to do that, because 20 years ago I had that feedback and got paranoid. But it highlights things I would say, if you do video yourself, don't get too hung up on the sound of your voice. You don't sound like you think you sound like in your head. It doesn't matter. Everybody else is very used to that. It's fine. But yeah, just look at it, and look at the other thing. Whenever I'm doing feedback in real life with people, is I will start by asking them what they thought they did well. And inevitably, everybody instantly goes into, well, this was really bad, and this was really bad. And try and look at the stuff that you are doing well as well, because there will be some. But then look at, what could I do to make this even better? And just focus on one thing at a time. If you try and change everything instantly, you're going to get overwhelmed. But try and be as objective as you can. And if I'm taking averages and percentages, vocally, slowing down is probably the biggest. But of those 5 things that I talked about, just changing one of those will often impact the others. So if I told you to be louder, generally you'll slow down anyway. So pick one that you're seeing, but that you're most comfortable with doing. Slowing down is hard because it feels ridiculously slow to you. But yeah, absolutely, practice video yourself, even record your voice if you can't do the video. But it's really powerful if you can do that, definitely.
Okay, good. Right, well, thank you so much, Liz. I'm sure we've all picked up some great tips there from today's. I look forward to the next one, and we'll announce soon when that will be coming. But thank you everybody for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you've got any questions that you think of afterwards, then please let me know. I'll pass them on to Liz, and then we'll get back to you. All right, thanks everybody. Bye.